Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Open Mic, the show where every week I talk to writers and editors, sometimes agents, occasionally even songwriters, the occasional playwright, just all kinds of folks who make a living writing words, getting the skinny on how they do that thing they do. Today, I'm joined by author Kerry Cox, the man behind the outstanding Nick Tanner crime thriller series, among many things. Kerry's a very versatile, very experienced and skilled writer in many, many formats. So we're going to talk about some of those today. Kerry, welcome to the Open Mic.
Thank you, Rich. It's great to be here.
Oh man, pleasure is definitely all mine. I noted you're a very versatile writer, and we're going to get into that in a little bit, but I want to start out talking about the Nick Tanner series because I just discovered it. And I read the first in the series, Money Bear, which I absolutely loved. I had a really hard time putting it down. And for those who have not had the pleasure, I'm hoping you'll tell us a little bit about the book and the series, and then we'll get into everything else.
Sure. Well, the idea for Money Bear and for the series actually, it happened. I guess this happens a lot with writers, but it was a germ of an idea years ago that I just kept mulling over, and in the process of writing for a living, and writing for paychecks, it would start and stop, and I'd think, no, that's not the way to go after it, and then here's another way to go after it, and where that was I was at a museum, and I ran across an exhibit about bear gallbladders and the traditional Chinese medicine industry, if you will, market, and how bears were being poached here in the United States for their gallbladders, and then those were sold overseas, and it was becoming really a huge problem that I certainly had never heard about, and I think many people were completely unaware of. But of the 8 species now of basic 8 species of bears in the world, believe it or not, there are only 8 sort of basic species. 6 of those are endangered. And the reason for that is almost exclusively because of poaching. China has pretty much wiped out their brown bear population. And now they even, although these are slowly becoming illegal there in China, or they are illegal, but slowly being enforced in China is probably a better way to put it. Where they have these bear farms, these gallbladder farms, and they actually put the bears into these little cages where they can't move, and they put a tube into their gallbladder, and they just milk the bears for gallbladder, and that's it. They feed one end and clean the other end and milk the bears for gallbladder. So it's a horrible practice, and at the time I thought, my gosh, this is something that I would like. I feel there's a story in this, and people don't know about it. And I'm a huge reader of crime thrillers, going from Elmore Leonard and Hyacinth up through Child and up through pretty much anybody, Winslow, anybody that you can name. I've read pretty much all their stuff. That's what I like. I feel comfortable writing in it. So I thought I'm going to come after it that way. And that's really the origin of the story.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned some really great ones. I'm a huge Don Winslow fan, and Joe Clifford and a lot of those folks like that. And I will tell you, I really did get a lot of that same sense. I mean, if I hope you take that as flattery, because I really mean it that way. It's that's rarefied air, and I really thought that I felt it was very much akin to the kind of work that those guys do, and those are the masters of the art. So I mean sincere praise there.
Thank you. That's high praise indeed.
Well, and I've read lots and lots of heroes and heroines in these things, but you don't often see a federal wildlife agent. I don't think I've ever seen a federal wildlife agent as the hero of a crime thriller story. So that unto itself was really unique. Was there an inspiration for Nick Tanner, or is that just an accumulation of stuff that you put together?
So I remember in one of your recent interviews where you mentioned that writers often put something of themselves in their characters, in their lead characters. So I went to Oregon State to major in wildlife management. I wanted to be like somebody like Nick Tanner. I couldn't pass chemistry. it just wasn't happening. And after 2 semesters of chemistry and realizing I had biochem ahead of me, I thought, you know what, maybe those teachers who were telling me to be a writer were right. I should probably just go to that. And so I got out of that, but it's always been there. I'm heavy in wildlife rescue right now. I'm with the Marine Mammal Center here. I'm with Pacific Wildlife Care here. Just got back last week from tube feeding elephant seal pups. So I'm heavily involved with wildlife. For me, the Nick Tanner character is my chance to fantasize about what it would be like to do that. So that was the inspiration, Rich. I have to be completely honest about that.
Well, engaging guy, loved it. So tell me about the brand new book, Canned Hunt. As I said, I just got it. I haven't had a chance to even to crack it open yet, but I have high hopes. Yes, that one right there.
There it is.
Yes, tell me about it.
So as you know, in Money Bear, we were in the Pacific Northwest, the Redwoods. So one of the attractions of using a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service special agent for me, and by the way, there are only 200 of them in the United States. It's really an exclusive little club. One of the attractions for me was I can put him anywhere. Mm-hmm. He's US. He can go to federal, he can go to national parks, he can go to state, he can go anywhere. So I thought one of the things I always want to do is create a new world in each of these books. I don't want them to all, there are a number of wildlife writers out there, Nevada Barr, my goodness, he even has a series out right now in Montana. It's set in Montana. Joe Pike, the Joe Pike series. Oh my gosh, his name went out of my head. It'll come to me. At any rate, they're wardens, but they're set always in the same place. And right. What that started to feel, and they're very skilled writers, but what it started to feel like to me was I'm kind of reading the same story over and over again. And it was a little because I'm always in the same setting. And they, what Craig Johnson does so cleverly to avoid that is he changes the weather so dramatically and takes you out of that. So that's how he gets around that. But I thought I can get around it by just going somewhere else. So I went in this book, in Canned Hunt, I go to Book Cliffs, Utah, which is near the Green River. It's kind of on the border there of Utah and Colorado. And near kind of Grand Junction sits on the east side. And then you've got this area, Book Cliffs. It's desperately barren, completely remote. It's exactly the kind of thing I'm always looking for, because I want to put Nick and everybody else in sort of this other world, right? This isolated sort of world. And in that world, in Canned Hunt, we're talking about, first of all, I'm saying Canned Hunt over and over. Do you know what Canned Hunt even is?
Well, I know what a canned hunt is. Yes, essentially, where animals are, well, my understanding of a canned hunt for the most part is that they're set up to be hunted in a limited space to give, let's say, lesser skilled hunters a chance to feel good about themselves shooting a wild animal. That's correct.
And it's a huge industry, and it's completely legal in all but about 11 states. It's a big industry in Texas where the ranchers will import all sorts of exotic species from Africa, Asia, wherever, and they'll set them loose in enclosures. And these hunters either walk around and shoot them, or in many cases, just stand in the back of a pickup truck and pick them off. And then that trophy is, they take the trophy. There are other types of canned hunts. In this case, the type of canned hunt is where the animal is slightly disabled. It's shot basically either in the foot, it's crippled in some way, and then released into an area, and then the outfitter takes the person on a hunt. And of course, it's quite an easy hunt because the animal is handicapped at that point. Again, that's not illegal. But it is illegal to hunt an animal out of season without tags, that sort of thing. And in this instance, this case, Nick is out investigating an outfitter who's conducting illegal hunts that also happen to be canned hunts. And sort of the kickoff to the plot is that somebody had already been there. A special agent had been there before him in doing this investigation. She is found in the middle of Book Cliffs, shot with nobody around, no evidence, no clues, no nothing. And so he's following up on her case. And that's the launch point.
Well, I cannot wait to get into it. I am an outdoors person to the core of my soul. And yeah, I know, again, as I was reading Money Bear, I mean, there were parts of that, all of it. I mean, I thought you really weaved in some of the real key problems that particular area. In this time, for those who haven't read it, it's in Northern California, the illegal pot grows, and just all the stuff that comes with living in those areas now. And it's really tragic. It's tragic for the animals in particular. I think it's tragic for the people that try to live there. So yeah, that was really good stuff. So I noted you have a pretty wide and varied background as a writer, and you've written for television. Correct me if I get any of these wrong. Newspapers, newsletters, screenplays, marketing materials for corporate America. And you've done 2 craft books on writing, at least as a co-author or main author. I'm going to ask you about some of that in a minute, but first thing I want to know is how was that transition to go from all this strictly nonfiction to a fiction series? Was that a difficult transition in any way? Did you have to change anything about how you went about your processes? How did that work for you?
Well, did I have to change anything about processes? Certainly, writing novels is a freer feeling. I'm free to write chapters that will never make it into the book. I'm free to explore certain avenues of a story and then go, it didn't work. And it's fine, I didn't miss a deadline, anything like that. Whereas, because I write very fast, and I write very fast because I have written on deadline my whole life. Since I left school, since I couldn't pass chemistry, and I went into freelance writing. And I started out writing magazine articles for sports magazines like Canoe Magazine and Karate Black Belt Magazine and magazines like that. And I sold my first short story when I was 21 to just an upstanding publication called Gallery Magazine. It was a men's publication, and it was reprinted in Dude Magazine. And I thought, throw those 2 checks together, I made $300, and I thought, I'm on my way. This is it. And it got a lot harder after that. But did I change my process? No, I have always written every day. I keep, on the novels, I keep to a pretty lenient word count for myself, about 500 words a day. That's very comfortable for me. If I exceed it, good for me. If I'm a little short, I don't beat myself up over it, because I know I'll make it up later. If I'm on particular gigs, because I still write TV commercials as well. And so if I'm on something like that, obviously that's, those are bigger paychecks, and I have to devote my time to that. And Rich, it's just about keeping at it. Writing is about perseverance as much as probably anything else.
Right.
And
well,
so that's it.
Tell me about Walking Bird Creative.
Walking Bird Creative was my freelance company name. I was its sole employee. and
well, it's such a cool name, you
wondering where the name came from?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's done a ton of freelancing himself, I mean, I never thought to have a cool name. It was always Rich Ehisen, right? But having a good company name like that, I said, oh, I want to know about that.
So I think you have a picture of me with the reason that I have that name. I raised emus for a while, just as a hobby.
Yes.
I had a very, very small ranch in the hills back, kind of in the Thousand Oaks, California area, in the hills behind there. And I had a certain amount of acreage, and I hated all the weed whacking I was doing. And I thought, I want something to go out there and keep the weeds down, but I don't want to pick up horse poop, and I don't want to pick up donkey. So emus were the answer. Their poop just melts right into the ground, but they don't do anything for the weed growth. So I still ended up weed whacking out there every year. But I just thought Walkingbird was kind of a cool name. So
Yeah.
that was the name of the ranch.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, you've written a couple of craft books too, and including one that I like the title, How to Write Faster Than Anyone Better and Better Than Anyone Faster. I love that title. I've used that line myself. I think it's alleged to have come from journalist A.J. Liebling. I believe it probably really did. A lot of those are apocryphal, but I think that one actually did come from him. And it's intended to offer writers, and I'm going to quote here, immediately actionable guide for aspiring semi-professional and professional writers who want to optimize their dollars per time spent writing. And I like that because one of the things that I often will talk about with writers, people who come to me and say, well, you're on writing, tell me some secret or whatever. And the two things I always tell them is, hey, you got to know what you want, number one. But really more than anything is you got to decide if you have an entrepreneurial mind and a spirit, because if you don't, this is not the business for you. You really, really need to have an entrepreneurial mindset. That's my perspective. So tell me more about what I just read there, from your book, and what someone who maybe went to that particular book of yours, what would they be getting out of that?
So you hit it when you said, you have to have an entrepreneurial mind. Writing copy and writing TV commercials and writing that sort of stuff, being a reporter, all of that is a business. And you have to approach it like you're going to work, and you have to approach it for am I using my time efficiently? And where are my opportunities? How can I explore new opportunities? How can I make money over there? When I was in the corporate world for 28 years or so, and when I got out of that and opened my own office, I thought, I'm going to go out of the house. I'm going to open a little office someplace just to get out of the house so that I'm focused for 6 to 8 hours, whatever. And I was in an office complex, and I thought, well, shoot, look at this directory. So I just started walking around and introducing myself to all the other people in that office complex, and ended up with 3 clients there, just right away, because they hadn't been approached. And people in business that aren't writers hate writing their own advertising, hate writing their own PR stuff.
Yeah.
And it's typically not difficult work if you know the basics and you're fast. So that's what the book about is: finding opportunities, optimizing those opportunities, optimizing your time, and there's some writing exercises in there as well, obviously, for writing effective copy. It's not just about the business.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds like a good starting point for a lot of folks. I'm intent, because I do get asked that a lot, and not everybody's wanting to write a novel. Some people are just trying to figure out, could I make a living doing this? And I think you can, but it does require you to be all in. Certainly mentally, you have to be all in. You really do. And I love the freelance part. I think a lot of people presume when you say you're a freelancer that, that means, you goof off half the day and everything. No, because I don't get paid for goofing off, right?
No, it's and look, there's nothing glamorous about the hustle. You've got to hustle. But if it's the way that you want to make a living versus however else you might have to go and make it beats flipping burgers, it beats any of the other stuff as far as I'm concerned. Now, and what you said earlier, goofing off all day. What freelancing does do is it does give you the opportunity to structure your day the way you want to.
Yeah.
And now that's not saying that you get to wake up in the morning and go, all right, today I'm going to have a couple of beers in the morning and then I'm not going to do anything. and then I'll do some writing tonight. That doesn't work except maybe once in a while. But it does give you the chance to say, I'm going to do, my friend Jurgen, my co-writer Jurgen, did all of his writing late into the night and early morning hours, but he slept 6 hours and then did all of his hustling, all of his marketing, all of his phone calls, all of that during the day. So he just segmented his day that way. I don't do that. I just do it all kind of at once. I do my novel writing, frankly, mostly in the evening hours, but my work stuff, get up in the morning, go to work just like I'm going to a job. And if there's nothing on the plate for that is specifically due right then I'm thinking, okay, who haven't I heard from in a while? Or I'll read a trade mag or something like that and figure out, make one contact a day, make one marketing effort a day. That's all you have to do. And at the end of the year, you've done it 360 some odd times. And, that's a lot of marketing.
Yeah. Well, and that's the note I was making to myself earlier. I wanted to talk to you about marketing because marketing, in the modern age, I think another thing that takes writers off guard is they think, oh, I'm going to get the, even if they get an agent and they get a contract, unless your last name is King or Winslow or somebody like that, odds are pretty good you're going to do most of your own marketing. That's how the world is now. The big five caters to the biggest of the names, and everyone else has got to have to pony up on their marketing. And the lower down the food chain you are, the more that you do. So I'm curious about your approach to marketing. You just explained some of that. Talk to me a little bit about, though, just for the novels. Did you have a marketing concept and a plan that you wanted to put into place to help yourself out when you started writing these books?
So the answer is yes, I had a plan to put into play. Due to the fact that, I was a chief communications officer at a $100 million company, I decided I'm going to do a marketing plan, like a real marketing plan. Like, this is my product and I'm going to do a real marketing plan. And I just did a simple PowerPoint to myself of the steps I wanted to do. Did I want to enter contests? Did I want to go to book festivals? Did I want to reach out to folks like you? Did I want to try and set up book signings? Did I want to just get into some local bookstores here, just walk in? And so I put all those things down and I just start down the list and try and tick them off as I go, and not be afraid to hear no. Writers hear that all the time, and it's probably old advice that they shrug off, but you're just going to get told no so often. Just get used to it, and don't let it bug you. If with the right approach and with the right attitude, you'll hear yes more often than you would think. And I have never had a problem walking into a bookstore and getting the manager of the bookstore interested in the series. One of the other things that I'm doing with like, say, Money Bear. Okay, Money Bear, this is a good example of target marketing. Money Bear was up in the Pacific Northwest. It was up in the Redwoods, Northern California, for those of you who don't know where the Redwoods are. Beautiful area of Northern California. Well, they've got cities up there like Arcata, where Humboldt State is, and they've got Ukiah, and they've got some decent Eureka. And so I thought, all right, I'll call the bookstores there, find out who the manager is, get a hold of them and tell them I've got a book that's set right there in their backyard and it's really fun, and I'll send them a copy or whatever they want. Every single one of them said yes. Hopefully every single one of them now has the book in their store. but that's just target marketing. Now with Utah, I'll do the same thing. You know, I'll find Grand Junction's right there in that area. That's a fairly big city. And of course, Salt Lake and all that in Utah, I will target market bookstores in that area. It's small stuff. Is it going to make me, you know, rich with each bookstore sale? No, but you can't overlook each little marketing opportunity that you might have.
Yeah.
So that's what I do.
I wanted to ask you some questions about process because, you know, I think a lot of people tune in here to hear how writers do what they do. And so one question I ask almost everybody that I talk to, there's always two trains of thought. Are you a seat of the pants writer, or are you plot it all out first and go off the outline? Which way is your preference?
I'm a hybrid. I believe in outlines as just like if I'm gonna, I do a lot of my own sort of handyman work. And so like if I'm building a shed, I draw out the shed and decide what it's going to look like and what the basic dimensions are going to be, but I improvise as I go along and change the plan as I go along. Same with any landscaping I might do or whatever. So in my book, I'll try and get my main thing. All right, what's my act one? What's my act two? What's my act three? What are the main break points? And then what are some main beats in each of those break points? What scenes do I see that are just really cool and I want to write them? And if they don't make it into the book, that's fine, but it'll really help me as far as developing my character or whatever, or getting some momentum going. So I almost always think of and listen, you know, these are being published. The Nick Tanner series is being published. I got plenty of novels that haven't been published. and in all of them, I think about what my first scene is. What's the opening? You know how Raiders of the Lost Ark or James Bond movies are famous for this or whatever. There's just some smash first scene that hooks you in, and it may or may not have a huge relevance to the rest of the story. It usually has a little bit of a hook into it, but it's all about get interested in this and see this character in action and see what they do for a living. And that's what I think about, you know, with each of the novels that I do. So where was I? Oh my gosh, I probably strayed way off tangent.
Well, I asked if you answered the question because I asked if you went by seat of the pants.
Oh, plotting or outlining.
Like you do a little bit of both.
So there's more, because what I do then is once I kind of get some momentum going, and like I say, I know my act 1, 2, and 3 roughly. I never know exactly where I'm going to end. I just know what I want to happen at the end. So I'll outline. I'll then go back and I'll say I've got 30 to 50 pages written. I'll write an outline of those 30 to 50 pages. Here's what happened. Here's what happened. Then I'll outline some more, and I'll see how that flow goes. And then I'll just jot out stuff for the ending. And as I continue the book, I'll keep that process going. Every 50 pages or so, no set rule, I'll go back and re-outline what I've done and see if it all makes sense. Because sometimes you can look at an outline and go, whoa, this scene needs to be over here, or this scene should go away. And really, you can't see that as well, or I can't. My brain isn't big enough to see that in 200 and some pages of text. I've got to see it in like an index cards type of format that I can move around. I don't use index cards. I use a free program called Super Note Card, but either way, it's the same process. So I think that answers the question of why I'm a hybrid. I do outline. I just kind of do it as I go along.
You know, it's interesting. I do something really similar, and I only adopted it recently, and it has made a huge difference on the manuscript I'm working on, because I was just shuffling around and totally pantsing it, even though I felt like, oh, I'm so familiar with this, I know where I'm going. But you know, it's difficult sometimes to remember, wait a minute, did I use the same phrase? I feel like I used this phrase before. Then you spend 20 minutes going back through all your stuff, trying to find it. So I ended up doing a very detailed chapter by chapter synopsis. And so I don't have to spend that much time looking now. I can pretty much, I know, okay, if I'm thinking about this phrase or this thing happening, oh, look, there, it should have happened right there. So I'll just go look there. And it's been a big time saver. Plus, it just helps keep me focused. I mean, I'm my ADD personality butterfly. I'm chasing them all, every moonbeam, right? It's really hard when my dog starts barking, you name it, anything could distract me. So I've just found at the course of time, but it's interesting. I do very similar. I go back and I check in as much on the synopsis outline that I've written as I do on the story. I try to make sure they've lined up, that I change something, because if I'm going to look at the synopsis now and continue on, I need to make sure it does match what I've written, so I don't veer off and I'm going off, two different directions. You don't want to lose the wheel this close to the end, right?
Right. Once you get that far along, you want to make real sure that your outline reconciles perfectly with the sequencing of your story. Certainly, I'll go through and when I'm just jotting outlines at the beginning, my actual story, I'll go back and see like initial outlines, and it looks nothing like those outlines at all. It was, it's like I did a completely different story, or what was I thinking when I wrote that outline? But it still was a momentum builder, and you need to have that, and allow yourself as a novelist to occasionally go, I want to try it this way. And so you write it that way, and then just be honest with yourself about whether it's working or isn't working. Don't hang on to it because it's really poetic writing or whatever, or you really like that character. Sometimes that can take you down a wrong path.
Oh man, I tell you, you got to learn to kill your darlings. Because I got to tell you, there has been more time wasted in the craft of writing through the millennia for people who just didn't want to give up that beautifully crafted couple pages they wrote that doesn't do a damn thing to move the story along. And that's great. Once you get to a certain level, like again, I'm going to keep picking on Stephen King, but Stephen King can write anything he wants to. Right? Everybody else has got to make every word sing, right? And that's just how it is. So anyway, what makes a great character for you? Whether it's something you're reading or something you're writing, are there aspects of a character that draw you in as a reader or a writer that you just feel like, I have to have this to keep my interest?
I have to see them physically, and I have to be able to hear them differently from the other characters. I get so irritated when I read books, and some pretty good authors are guilty of this sometime, in my view, of characters who all sound the same. They all use the same idiom. They use the same slang. You couldn't tell where they were from. I like to kind of have an idea of where my characters came from, what their background was. In Canned Hunt, there's a set of triplets who are each 6.5 feet tall. And they're from West Virginia. And one of them still has his West Virginia twang, and the other two have worked really hard to overcome it. And I can see these guys, I can hear these guys, I know their background, and so I can let that background play into how they interact with each other and how they interact with the community. I have to be able to see these people. And now, Rich, I don't want to say that I want people to get into, or that I recommend people get into these big, long character descriptions, because those are real snooze fests too, right? You have to let people know about your characters a little bit at a time throughout your story, and always do it by what they do, not so much what they say. How they say it, sure, and what they do, that's who the character is.
Yeah.
And I like a character that, like for a main character, I like a character that's funny, that is clever, that I like to put a lot of wit into the book. I feel like hopefully Money Bear had a lot of wit to it and had some humor to it, because otherwise it's kind of a depressing topic. And so,
well, and I did notice that. I think that's one of the reasons I find myself being so absorbed in stories like that. It's one of the things I love about the Longmire series. Craig Johnson, we are talking about that, about Craig Johnson, but even, you know, Lincoln Child and Doug Spencer's work. So many of the crime writers I read, you know, crime, by its very nature, crime and noir is dark. You're talking about people doing bad people doing bad things for bad reasons, right? And you know, my brother was a cop. I believe me, if there's one thing I know, is that there is gallows humor in
Oh,
for most
totally.
people who work in these fields, because you would lose your mind if
Absolutely.
you did not have some way to lighten these circumstances. And it's off-putting probably to anybody who isn't in those circumstances. But I think if you are in them, I mean, ER nurses, I'm sure everyone in the military, I mean, how
Yeah.
else could you keep your sanity, right? So you know, when you have somebody who's one of only 200 and they're going into situations where they could very easily get killed trying to do their job, yeah, they have to have a sense of humor. And I thought that really came through, because to me, it's realistic.
Yes. I think it is. I think it is realistic. It's like you say, it's probably a matter of emotional and mental survival.
Yeah. Well, I've already had to ditch a couple of my questions because I've rattled on too long, but this is one I really want to ask you, because I think um, it's important to all the people that tune in here. You know, the publishing industry has changed a lot over the last 20 years, and there's lots of opinions on good or bad. And so I want to ask yours, because um, you know, we've seen a terrible winnowing down of the opportunities in the traditional publishing industry, but we've seen a growth in indie publishers and small presses and things like that. Certainly, there's so many other formats. What's your perspective? Is the industry better right now for writers, or than it was maybe 2 decades ago, or is it not better?
Well, I wish that I'd written novels 20 years, these novels 20 years ago, because when I took Money Bear out to on the great agent hunt, and got some responses, and had one agent call me up and you know, want to represent it, and he said, you know, a decade, 15 years ago, I'd have a bidding war going for this right now. I could have sold this 100 times, blah, 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 blah. And now it's getting a lot harder. Well, you know, and I kept hearing, and he's not the agent I ended up signing with. I signed with another agent, but she's kind of said the same thing. You know, she was Victoria Skurnick is her name, and she was the what's was it Reader's Digest books? Anyway, she used to be a curator of book club kind of things, and so she's very familiar with the industry. And she said the same thing. This would have been a super easy sell X years ago. So from that standpoint, I guess I wish I was in it earlier.
Right.
It seems really hard. What's hard about it, Rich, is what you alluded to earlier, is that marketing budgets only go to the names. And so in essence, I'm with a fairly small house, Level Best Books, great house. It's very niche oriented, and they do a really fine job. But they don't have a marketing budget per se. They have some, and they help out. But you're, you know, I could self-publish and be pretty much having to do the same kind of marketing, you know. And so really what I don't know whether it's going in that direction or not. Believe me, I've thought about, you know, the idea of, should I just self-publish if I'm having to do so much of the marketing myself? And yet I just feel there's a stamp of legitimacy still to conventional publishing.
Yeah.
That helps you rise above the sort of mess, because there is a mess out there. If you read some self-published books, and I have, it's painful. And yet, how do you rise above that? How do you stand apart? It's in my mind, the one way to stand apart was traditional publication. So that's why I stayed that route.
Well, you know, again, and this is alluded to this earlier. I said, sometimes when people ask me, and I'll tell them, look, number one, you got to know what you want. If you don't care, I mean, if the only thing that matters to you is you get a solid New York agent or LA agent, and you get signed with a good house, one of the big five, that's your goal, and nothing else will suffice. Bang on, bang on. Know how hard it's going to be, accept it, and do the work. As long as you're willing to do the work, great. If that doesn't matter to you, and you're okay with a small house, or maybe ultimately just publishing it yourself and getting it out there in whatever way you want to, that's all fine too. But you got to know that that's what you want. Right. And you will not be happy with, if you're not going to be happy with anything other than the big agent and the big house, okay. It's probably going to take you a lot longer than it will other people. But if you also don't want to settle for doing something where you just do the minimal, then yeah, you got to understand it's going to take a level of work too. So I really appreciate your perspective on that. So I, as you know, because you've watched my show, I'd like to end on what I hope to be is a fun question. I always mean for this to be a fun question, and I'm going to give you my usual 3 options of a person I could put you together with for a nice long conversation, maybe an adult beverage or two, and talking about whatever you guys want to talk about.
Is one of them Salma Hayek by any chance?
No.
Oh, all right.
No, I'm very greedily keeping that one for myself.
Okay.
My options for you today. I will give you Gifford Pinchot, father of the U.S. Forest Service. Ron Cey, the former third baseman for the Los Angeles Dodgers, great third baseman for the Los Angeles, and an Oregon native, and the astronaut Sally Ride.
Now, how in the world did you come up with that list? Where did Ron Cey come from? Did you know I was a Dodgers fan, or? I
do my homework, man. When you say you thought maybe you wanted to be a third baseman.
Wow.
I know these things.
Wow. Yeah. Years of tournament softball at third base. I'm going to have to, shallow as it may be, Rich, I'm going to have to go with Ron Cey. He was my dad's hero when we were growing up. And I've always wanted to meet the Penguin. I know, I wish I were deeper. I wish I had some sort of more respectable response. Is that right? But it would have to be Ron Cey. Sorry.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I think anything I offer you is a respectful one. Well, along those lines, I'll tell you right before we talk, I'll tell you a very quick story. Of course, Ron Cey was traded to Oakland at the end of his career. He played with the Cubs and with the A's. I'm a huge A's fan. Always have been my whole life. And I remember being at a day game when I think he was with the A's just a very brief time, maybe 1 year.
Yeah.
I do remember he came up in a game. It was a day game. A buddy and I were there. I had probably had a few adult beverages, and I said something too loud. The team wasn't good. There weren't very many people there. My voice, as you probably tell, my voice is loud. It carries.
Voice carried. Yeah.
I said something to the effect of, come on, Cey, you loser, or something. And of course, he hits the next pitch out of the park. It was a grand slam. Everybody around us, gave me grief. I wore it because what else can you do? Yes, right. The moron on his 4th beer today, which I don't do anymore. So I just wear it. That was one. I loved Ron Cey too. I was, again, big A's fan, but my cousin played in the Dodgers chain for a while, and
oh, no kidding! Wow.
That infield, Garvey, Lopes, Russell, Cey, for 8 years, 9 years, longest in Major League history. The 4 of them. What can you say about that, right?
Yeah, you're not going to see anything like that again, I don't think. And,
not this day and age. So.
And yeah, I went to a Father's Day game with my dad, and Ron Cey hit a foul ball in our general vicinity, and I scrambled like hell to get that ball, but I was not. I can't end with a happy ending there. I was unsuccessful.
Well, that's a shame. I'm sure if you ever get a chance to meet him, though, I'm sure I've heard good things. I don't know. I've never met him either. So. Well, Kerry, this has been fabulous. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate your time. For anyone maybe if you tuned in late, if whatever, if you haven't checked out the Nick Tanner series, the new book is Canned Hunt. The first in the series is Money Bear. I've read Money Bear. It's really, really good. Again, if you're a fan of folks like Don Winslow and Carl Hiaasen and folks like that, I think you'll really like it. I know I did. Highly recommend it. Kerry, this has been great. I really appreciate you, like I say, sharing your time and insights with us.
Thank you, Rich. It was a lot of fun. Thank you very
Great.
much.
Well, and I will hopefully, if you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on whatever your podcast platform of choice is. I'm on all of them. You can go out and spend a lot of money on a craft book or two, which, if you do, buy one of Kerry's, or you can tune in and listen to the writers themselves tell you how it is they do what they do. That's the whole point of what we're doing here. So until next week, I'm Rich Ehisen. This has been the Open Mic, and I'll leave you with one final thought. Tomorrow is not promised to any of us, so make today count. See you next time.